my gosh, you guys. This was an incredible conversation. As I said at the end, one of my favorites probably all year. We started this business when we saw the results at our very first software customer, Cellthera Marine, Rich Olson, who was the first interview that I did on this podcast. So go back and listen to it. When we saw the impact that ProShop could have on a team and the individual people in that company, when they really leaned into what it's capable of and used it as an effective tool to run their business, that was remarkable. And this conversation with Perry was nothing short of that. It was my, I think, longest podcast I've ever done. Every minute of it is worth listening to. And the personal impact and the transformation that clearly K Tooling has gone through is amazing and worthwhile to keep trying to do over and over again with hopefully thousands of companies and hopefully have a tangible impact on the industry. So that's what it's about. That's what we get into in this episode. I love the way Perry leads his team and talks about the way he runs his business. So there's a ton of takeaways, hopefully for you as well, in the way to be a good leader. And we'll leave it at that. It's a really heartwarming conversation. Now it's the officially fourth time I've choked up on a podcast, but it's really good stuff. So enjoy the conversation and thank you for listening. Hey there, Perry. Good. Let's see. For you, good afternoon. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've known each other for quite a long time now. And I asked you to be on the show a while ago and you're like, I don't think we're quite ready. But then you reached out proactively recently. And I was like, heck yeah, awesome. So let's first have you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about K Tooling. Tell us about the business.
So, I started K Tooling back over 30 years ago as a transition between my dad's business being an outdoor lighting manufacturer and OEM, being hurt from offshore competition through the later part of his career. And he said, hey, you may want to think about being involved in CNC machining. And it's like, well, what is that? And he kind of laid down the foundation to make a transition from his OEM product to subcontract manufacturing. So that's how we kind of migrated from point A to point B. And from there, the goal always was to have my own shop. And probably several years after working out in the field, I pulled the trigger and bought our first CNC lathe, and then a milling center, then a horizontal milling center, and then a 5-axis machine. So sheet metal fab. So it continues on.
Wow, sheet metal too. That's cool.
Yeah.
So what does the company look like today? How many machines or people, and kind of what do you specialize in?
I'm a machinist by trade, but we got involved in sheet metal because every time we received machine parts, there were always sheet metal parts in. And we started off subbing that out, and then we bring in welding, and then we had an opportunity to expand with a client, which allowed us to purchase the CNC laser and press brake. So we got 3 CNC turning centers, 2-axis to multi-axis, sub-spindle, C-axis, Y-axis milling, and then on the mill side, 3-axis vertical machining centers, and then 400 millimeter horizontal machining center, and of course the MAM, the flagship machine, the MAM 7235V with the 32 pallets, over 300 tools. That has been a big game changer and stuff for us. Then of course flip over to the sheet metal side, the Trump laser, Trump press brake, welding department. So we got around 20 guys. Does fluctuate a little bit. I think every company does.
Of course.
And 10,000 square foot facility, then my old facility I still have. So that's another several thousand square feet we use, probably working towards getting involved in powder coating. We'll see what path that is in supporting our sheet metal department.
Of course. And do you have any particular industries that you kind of specialize in, or geometries or types of parts?
Well, it's funny being a job shop. I'm always kind of asked that, what's your niche? What's your specialty? It is becoming more and more where the 5-axis machining seems to be the niche.
Yep.
Of course, we have great lead time and ability to quick turnaround parts and processing all the time, but that seems to be where our push and our gravity focus and stuff is. We're kind of going in that direction. Aerospace is becoming now more of a component, and that's where ProShop kind of plays a role in achieving our AS 9100 certification. So we have seen a transition in between commercial clients and aerospace clients. Right now, aerospace seems to be a little bit busier than our commercial client activity, and we'll probably can talk a little bit more about that. But we kind of go in the directions where our customers lead us.
Well, it's good to be well-rounded and have both the diversity of the types of equipment you have. That's a little bit unique, and I'd love to talk about powder coating and processing because vertically integrating is such a brilliant way to go these days, especially with outside processes just being so challenging or jammed up. And I'm sure you know it better than I
It's
do.
funny because I don't have several of any one type machine. We kind of
Mm-hmm.
pick a machine to start off with, let's say a lathe with 2-inch bar capacity. Well, the next lathe wasn't a duplicate. It was, hey, now 2.5-inch bar capacity. Next machine, hey, 3-inch bar capacity with milling, with Y-axis, C-axis, subspindle, those type of things. We're always trying to expand on our capabilities to say what we can offer to the customer. Next lathe,
Mm-hmm.
Might be a Swiss machine.
Right. Sure.
Kind of fall into that category. So again, the customers kind of guide us in the direction of where their equipment needs to be. So that's how we kind of decide. Same thing on the milling side, from vertical machining to horizontal machining to 5th-axis machining.
Yeah.
And any one of those could develop further to where, okay, we, pull a trigger and end up having a duplicate or the next size in that
Yeah.
interval.
Yeah. Both capability and capacity,
Right.
Uh, when did you pull the trigger on that MAM? That is that is obviously an exceptional machine.
That was the machine came delivered in 2022. We pulled the trigger in the fall. Actually, FabTech, I think FabTech was in Chicago that year.
Okay.
And being that we're involved in the sheet metal fab side, we kind of want to participate in FabTech. But we kind of diverted ourselves one of the days there at FabTech to go to see Yazamen is the distributor in our area for
Mm-hmm.
Matsura, and they had a facility in Chicago. So we diverted ourselves and went to their distribution center there in Chicago to actually see some of the equipment. And we ended up pulling. So we went to FabTech to buy a machine tool, to buy a tool for the machining side.
CNC machine.
But that's when we pulled the trigger. It took some months. That was when there was that was right at the tail end of COVID. There were,
Yeah.
there were delays on shipments and stuff, but we ended up getting it installed several months later in the early spring of 2022. I first saw that machine back in 2008 at IMTS.
Oh yeah.
At the time, I almost probably would have thought that was my next machine. We ended up buying a horizontal machine, Morisiki horizontal, great piece of equipment at that IMTS. But when I saw that MAM setup, I said, this is what we got to work towards. It did take me over a decade to get there, but we got there, and now that's a mainstay piece for us. Also, with our tooling and stuff that we developed, we took those 32 pallets. We have over 256 positions on there. So we're, very much taking 3-axis, 3+2 positional parts and just run them more efficient, instead of running multiple steps in the vertical or even in the horizontal for parts that don't fall into the horizontal category. We're taking those parts and taking very simple geometries, but getting lights out production because of that additional work holding and tooling that we developed to get, 8 positions per pallet, 256 individual positions on the machine. So that's been working out very well. In fact, that's what led to our most recent project that we just landed last week.
I want to hear about your special tooling. I definitely want to hear about your project if you can share it. But that story that you're telling of using the 5-axis and the multi-pallets just to get unattended runtime of 2+ or 3-axis type parts, it's a game changer, right?
Yes.
It's like you don't need a part that has 5-axis geometry to get massive benefits from a machine like that, man. So
Correct. That wasn't even the objective. The objective was not to do 5-axis parts per se, like
yeah,
true 5-axis
sure.
parts. I'm sure everyone would agree that the percentage of that is relatively small. We do it. We see it every once in a while. We have the capability of doing it, but the focus is just to be more productive with the 80% of the products that are out there.
Yeah, yep, you bet. Let's go back a little bit and talk about the systems that you were using at the time, the software, whatever it might have been, when you decided you needed something different and started researching.
Yeah, so we have been on a path. There were a couple things. We certainly were using an ERP system for around 20 years, the same system. And there were a couple things that we could not achieve with it. Maybe it had the capability to do this, but we've ended up falling up short on our end, let's say. Not to knock anybody else's piece of software and stuff out there, but the objective for us over time became we wanted 100% paperless job routers
Mhm.
and stuff. And this has been said time and time again to where guys would, you'd have to change process midway through, or guys would lose paperwork, you name it. We wanted to be 100% paperless. We also wanted a path for ISO AS 9100, not just being compliant, but actually becoming certified. We were compliant.
Yeah.
We went through the path with our local MEP years and years ago
Hmm.
to be ISO, and we did the manual, we did the consulting. We spent weeks and weeks of time, guy coming once or twice a week, going through every step. How do you do this? How do you do that? And we achieved that. But then I moved. And when I moved, you lose those credentials and you have to restart that. You have to rebuild that. We also
Yeah, yeah.
completely changed our company, adding sheet metal, growing into another building. There were a lot of things that were going on that even our old manuals, we were changing the process. And I think more importantly, we were looking for best practice techniques, not necessarily the way that we were doing it. We could adapt.
Mm.
And many of the consultants are always saying, well, we'll adapt to you. My argument was, no, I want to adapt to whatever a system is. And that's what
Yeah.
led us to investigating a new ERP system that kind of provided those details. And then we kind of came across ProShop and 100% paperless, your flying start package to kind of lay the foundational work to have the AS in our pursuit, the AS 9100, ISO 9001 certification process, and of course everything else that comes that is integrated into the ProShop platform.
Love the fact that you were really looking for a different way to do things and you were open, I'll call it, and maybe humble in your approach, because you don't always see that across the industry. There's a lot of folks that feel like they always know the very best way to do something. So,
Yeah, we took a completely non-biased. In fact, we even took a complete fresh look at our current ERP system at the time. We wanted to give everyone an opportunity to say, well, look, pretend that we're brand new, show us what we're capable of doing with your product. And we looked at other paperless platforms. We looked at some traditional platforms. We looked at everything that was kind of being presented for machine shops, I guess you would say.
hmm
Kind of wanted to stay within a certain realm of ERP systems. It just kept leading back to ProShop. Um, 'Cause we were checking all the boxes off. Of course, our conversations, listening to podcasts, and things rise up to the surface, and the ProShop was one of them that just kind of said, yeah, when you start checking all these boxes off and doing a process of elimination, pros and cons, it was like, ProShop kept kind of ending up on top.
So I'm curious. I was just looking up when you joined. It was 2022. So right after that time, you got that MAM, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. There were a couple things going on.
That's a lot of change for 1 year
Yeah.
in an organization.
Yep.
But I saw your old system, which we won't need to mention it. But I was recently interviewing someone who had that same system, and he also went to them and said, "Hey, we don't think we're utilizing the system to its full extent. Can you guys like give us more of a demo and just really talk about the possibilities?" And that company said, "No, you're already a customer. We're not going to put you through any demos." So I like that. Was that your experience, or did you have someone that actually maybe was listening a little bit better?
It wasn't our experience. I think
I'm
we were
glad. I'm
quite
glad.
familiar with the platform. I think where we fell short with our with the current platform, what I noticed different about ProShop than our old platform, because you're 100% paperless, because you're working on the terminal, you are kind of it forces you to use the system. You can't. There's
Mhm.
no workaround, and you don't want to find a workaround. You kind of want to stay in the environment. That also helps with our A and the AS9100 being built right within the system. We have no choice but to utilize the system for all our day to day, which keeps you compliant and keeps you paperless and keeps the workflow. Everyone buys in because nobody has an option not to,
Sure.
hey, you've got to record your parts at the end of the day. If you want that job to move forward, it sends emails. It's like the system agent is sending emails out. Hey,
Mm.
pay attention to this, pay attention to that. So it's not that it's effortless. It's just that you fall into the track. You conform to the process rather than being able to have, no, I do it my way, and I kind of am bucking the system.
Mhm.
Even if you have the buy-in, guys can kind of find a workaround, but there is no workaround. Because you must stay within the lanes of the how ProShop kind of guides you through this entire process. I mean, we're using every single aspect of ProShop, the tool crib, the inspection, the
Awesome.
calibration, all those things. I mean, now I think one of the latest releases talks about, my QC guy says that it flags if someone's trying to use an uncalibrated tool,
Yep.
it it
Yep.
won't allow the guy to use it. So those were things that were never even addressed in our previous ERP system. Those were things that we never even got to those points of using the system.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't have any of those things, right?
Right.
I know enough about it that, and which comes back to why ProShop was originally designed in the first place was because when our shop was needing to advance past the spreadsheets that we created, we got demos of the same software you were using and other ones similar. And we're like, yeah, show us all these cool machine shop we were pretty new into the industry and only 3 years in, 3 or 4 years in. And we're like, show us the inspection, show us the calibration, show us the work. And they're like, no, we don't do those things. You have to use some other software for that. And our software helps you put orders in and keep track of inventory and make packing slips. We were like, and it's paper. But that is awesome that you're jumping into all those modules because that's really.
Yeah, no, we didn't start off that way. Obviously, there's a learning curve for us, there was. We
Mhm.
started off accomplishing A and then moving to B and moving to C, but that snowball starts to roll, and once you kinda get going, then all of a sudden, what seems difficult becomes very easy. So, right from the get-go, we're always looking at ProShop for the answer first. We don't have separate email communication anymore. We're using this system completely. It's only for the few of us that have outside email dialogue. We're using our email client, but all
Sure,
internal
sure.
communications are all running through the system, our purchasing, all that stuff. So
That is so cool. What was that transition like for your team that was so used to a different system and paper and.
we had a meeting with everyone. You talk either through your different YouTube videos, training videos about the buy-in. We had enough new staff that weren't exposed to our old ERP system that when we were talking about a new ERP system, everyone was kind of ready for whatever was going to be coming down the pipeline from management down forward. As far as the management team goes, once we kind of had a little bit of dialogue about what our objectives and stuff were, the buy-in was easy because it checked all the boxes. So it was meeting the objectives that we set out as a team. So if you didn't buy in, the objectives were, then there must be some reason why, but they were would be counter to any of the objectives we were trying to achieve, right? If you're trying to achieve paperless, if you're trying to achieve AS, ISO, and you're trying to do all these things, when it comes together in a package and it's like, well, look, this is the one piece of software that's left. There was no real choice not to buy in.
Mhm.
And there was nobody was none of our team members. We worked very hard of having a very cohesive team with some of those personality traits. We talk, and in this podcast and other podcasts, you talk about the book traction, EOS. We all kind of, when you start to get exposed to some of those things, that's exactly kind of the philosophy that I like to carry across. So fit very well into our team. The software fit very well into how we wanted to accomplish things. So the buy-in actually was easy. And being a smaller company, was also easy too.
Do you feel like you said you had that sort of open mind for a different way to run the business? Do you feel like that permeates all the way down the floor? Like that's in your culture of like always looking for continuous improvement, always being open to new ideas? Is that something you've fostered?
Yeah, very much so. I kind of have the brainstorm as far as, I'm the creator, I'm the thinker, I'm the one that kind of comes up with ideas. I present it to the team. Of course, I'm in pursuit of the team's buy-in, and when they buy in, if they have a different idea, I just kind of plant the seed of the idea. I really rely on them to kind of come up with the actual hardcore methodology on the manufacturing floor, take my ideas and adapt it to what's going to work for them. And because we have a pretty cohesive team, very much of a fellowship of colleagues, nobody's feathers gets ruffled. So they all kind of work together and they kind of meet the objectives, meet my goals, as far as what I envision and what they produce. We all kind of end up in the same places. It may not be exactly what my thoughts were, but they accomplish what the overall goal is. And I think that's good leadership and giving them the liberties and freedom to. The last thing I want to do is micromanage them. I just want them to be successful,
Hmm.
take the ideas and run with it. And I enjoy seeing what they come up with. So to me, my success is based on them being successful. I more or
Sure.
less make sure that I provide them the tools for them to be successful. ProShop being one of them. We're successful because of the members of the team, not because I decided that, hey, we're going to go with this piece of software and you guys need to buy in. And yeah, you buy in, but they are the ones that are running it. They're the ones that are actually doing it. I'm one cog in the machine.
Mm. Such a great way to think about leadership. Provide the vision, provide the tools, the infrastructure, and get out of their way. Let them do their great work.
Yeah, very much get out of the way. And I'm not saying that's easy all the time.
Oh, sure.
as as being somewhat of the personality that I have, but at the same time, I truly view it that it's a reflection of me, them being successful. If they're not successful, then I got to figure out what can I do to help you guys, and then let me help you, and let's see if that is what you need. And usually that's what it is. They just need a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance, but more or less, kind of, hey, Perry, just kind of get out of our way now. Let us show you where our capabilities and stuff are. And time again is becoming more and more of, when I see the results, it was like, wow, you guys really pulled this off. Great job. I can't thank those guys enough for when they demonstrate back to me, when I may lay out an objective and all of a sudden days, weeks, months later, we circle back in our management review meetings. Hey, how do we make out on this? Hey, yeah, well, okay, wow, you guys were really successful on this, and my input was very minimum. So
Mhm.
that shows you the level of teamwork that those guys demonstrate.
Did you work in your dad's business before you started this one?
You mentioned that. You caught me off guard on that one. Did I work? The goal was for me to become a mold maker. That was the goal. So my dad, his outdoor lighting product was a zinc die cast, and that's hot chamber zinc, a mold type activity with secondary operations. The objectives were for me to actually be involved, and that would have been the direction for me to be a mold maker. But the writing was on the wall. I even took ads out. I took an ad out in the local newspaper in like the help wanted ad,
Hmm. Yep.
actually looking for someone to hire me as an apprentice. And I did have one company contact me, although they weren't hiring. They were kind of curious, more or less, who takes out an ad in the newspaper seeking a
For
position,
themselves.
not needing a
Yeah,
position. You know what I mean? So they were kind of curious of who I was.
it's creative.
And like I said, I think the writing was on the wall for his product line that offshore competition just continued to pound that. But my dad had enough foresight to say, hey, maybe this is not the path, but maybe subcontract manufacturing is the path. He did give me the seed money for the first machine tool and gave me the
Nice.
space to work in.
Oh,
So we
okay.
kind of shared the space between his company and my company. And as my company grew, he became more or less a component of what I had going on, less of a component of what he was doing. If he could have been on the CNC machine tools, he wasn't a CNC guy. Um, he would be more or less in the tool room making me little fixtures or little things that he felt that we needed helping us out. Of course, we did all the electrical and airlines, so all the infrastructure, all the millwright stuff, we would do together, we would do all that stuff. But I did help through high school and as a young adult, but as the transition kind of came about, he participated more in my business than I did in his, which was fantastic. We had
I'll
over a
bet.
decade of being able to work together. We had a great relationship that ended up working out quite well, actually.
Well, the question I was actually going to lead to is, did you learn your leadership style from your dad?
Actually, yes, meaning he was a complete opposite leader.
Okay.
When he had employees, his work ethic, he had a very tough work ethic. And I think he demanded a lot from his employees to the point that I think his leadership was somewhat counterproductive to getting the results that you want from employees. And I was very young in seeing that, but understanding his path kind of showed me a different way of leadership. So actually, being that you bring this up, as I think about that, yeah, my leadership was is kind of just the opposite, kind of an old school militant type leadership type structure, where the boss is kind of shouting out directions, and I would not say volatile. I would just think that he very much, to give you an example, his employees had a workstation. He didn't want anybody to move from his workstation. He didn't want people to communicate, kind of talk to each other during the workday. He would set up a workstation to kind of be isolated, to isolate the employee, and he would be the feeder. He would feed product to that particular workstation just to keep the interaction minimal. He was a completely different generation. My dad was born in 1929. He grew up during the Depression. So I could see where his philosophies as far as work and worth ethic, he wanted family to kind of all to chip in. That's the way he was raised. So it kind of would lead down a path where, not necessarily resentful, although I use that term. It's just that you kind of had to pay your dues. He expected, especially from family, to work and work hard, and because you're a member of the family, compensation wasn't necessarily the first priority. It was kind of like that. Hey, the business is the priority. But
Mhm.
once I was in the driver's seat and we kind of went in a different direction, his heart was in the right place. I mean, he definitely helped me through the process. He was really excited about CNC machining. He was always fascinated how the computer could, drive the machine, and he was not envious, But he was very proud of the role that he played and the foundation that he kind of set in guiding me down that path and then seeing the results. Um, so just a full
Super
circle
cool.
back, yeah, my management style is a little bit different. I want the guys to foster. I want the guys to be successful. Their success is my success. That's just the way that I view it. Sometimes I push guys in the direction of I always want them to take on more. Hey, what about instead if you're a operator, what about becoming a setup guy? Hey, if you're a setup guy, hey, what about becoming a programmer? Hey, we'll get another seat of the software. Hey, do you think you could do this? I'm all because there's not enough of us out there. So I'm always trying to help promote. In fact, I'll break off in a side direction. I helped one of my employees actually start one of their own machine shops.
That's
Guy wanted it was his goal to go out on his own. And he's an employee of mine. We're friends. And I said, okay. I said, when the opportunity arrives, when we're buying some equipment and stuff, one of those machines we'll plant in your and kind of in your garage. You get started. I'll sub you work and we'll lay down a foundation. And then eventually, you'll be out on your own. And we achieved that. So
Mhm.
that individual success I view as my success, even though somebody else would view that as why on earth. I had colleagues of mine kind of question that. Why are you helping one of your employees start their own machine shop? Quite honestly, it's who I am. I can't break that.
Well, I commend you for that. That is fantastic. And I think that mindset ultimately leads to the most success all the way around, right? Because that guy had
I
a
agree.
dream. He wanted to start his own business. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a wonderful thing. You got not only the satisfaction of helping him, feeling good in your heart, but then had a good vendor, right? That you could offload work to.
Yeah, and I could still reach out tomorrow and send parts to him and stuff. He's a great machinist. I know he's doing great. His objectives were slightly different than mine. I'm always looking to grow and grow bigger. He was like, "No, I'm good with having a machine, one or two machines in my garage. I just kind of want to
Lifestyle.
work out of my home." He's doing very well. I haven't spoke to him in a while, but the last time I did, he was doing great, and I'm very happy for him. And if that's a role that I play with that individual or all my employees and people that I interact with, there's enough success to go around.
Yeah, that's the abundance mindset, not the scarcity mindset.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling because we had a pair of brothers that worked at Pro CNC, and they very much wanted to start their own shop together. And we sold them one of our old machines. Actually, the second machine we ever bought
Right.
was a
Exactly.
VF2. It was a VF2. They bought that machine, started it up in their garage. They were a great vendor for us for forever.
Yeah.
In fact, I just saw on LinkedIn they celebrated their 17th anniversary in business like last year. And I'm like, that's how many years I had Pro CNC. And now he's going on,
Right.
longer in his business
Yeah.
than
Isn't
I
that
ever was
fantastic?
in mine. And in fact, we're having an all team meeting, an in person all hands meeting starting today up in Vancouver. And he is coming to be on our client panel just to talk to the entire team about what it's like in the industry and what it's like to be a part of the pro shop. And so it's like full circle, and it feels great to contribute to something like that.
Well, one of the things my dad did teach me was he always used this term, a code of ethics. You got to live by a code of ethics.
Absolutely.
Whatever those ethics are for every individual, mine are structured in such a way that you want to be successful, you want people around you to be successful, and whatever you can do to participate, then you're going to find what satisfies you as far as fulfilling you as an individual. It just happens to be that I lean a little bit more on the positive side than the negative side. So, I guess we could kind of summarize that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Well, it's got to be fun working at your shop, I imagine, for your team to be in an environment like that.
Well, they, yeah, you look, if you're in machining, the work is stressful enough.
Yeah,
Deadlines, part quality, problems as a machinist you run into to problem solve, to find solutions to make sure the part's coming out successfully. There's enough of those challenges, customer challenges, vendor challenges. You certainly don't need personality challenges, which are y- every company has them. You just have to try to find the path that leads to that positive outcome, that everyone feels like the results are fair and positive, and there's a real sense of care amongst yourselves. Like the leadership cares about the success of the individual, both in their professional career but also in their personal life. And what can we do to bridge that gap? What can the company do to help that success? And if we can play a role in that, then we do that.
so speaking of stressful, and it being a hard business, which I always say is the hardest in the world, I'd love to hear about, after you put ProShop in, what were some of the changes that happened that either made things easier, reduced stress level? We sometimes hear companies talking about how their culture has actually just shifted because there's more kindness and less stress and less people on edge because things are going smoother, or they're having to spend less effort to get the same or better results. Can you just speak to anything in that area?
Yeah, I can probably dive into that quite deeply. So when we made the decision to adopt ProShop, it was easy to adopt, and I don't mean implement. I mean make the decision. We sign up for the software. I'm the advocate. I'm the person inside that's doing the training, and I go through the training, and I'm getting familiar with ProShop. And then in so we do that in 2022. In October of 2022, we try to start to use ProShop. When you talk about the buy-in, we struggled because we were not being not my entire staff being familiar with the software.
Sure.
We were running our old ERP simultaneously as the new ERP.
Mhm.
That was extremely difficult. It helped bridge the gap, but at some point in the spring of 2023, after kind of an unsuccessful or a partial launch, the team had trouble separating, had trouble letting go of the old system, because there was a lot of we didn't integrate, we didn't move anything over from the old system. We
Mhm.
wanted to start fresh, so we had old part numbers. We were going to recreate them in the new system. And I think some of the team members were hesitant because they just weren't convinced yet that they were ready. It kind of took a big leap of faith to kind of say, yeah, we're going to go all in, fresh start, do this a new system completely. I did have a team member who, it wasn't that she wasn't part of making the transition, she could have been one of the biggest hurdles in the way that she wanted to operate the company. So maybe, in hindsight, maybe she was not 100% buy-in, even though she didn't necessarily express it. You do have those type of individuals say they're on board, but maybe not on board. But I had to step in and actually take over in the spring of 2023, where we stopped the old system cold turkey after 6 months of semi running it. We stopped the old system cold turkey, said, hey, I think it was, I don't know if it was April 1st or mid-April, whenever we started. And we said, okay, we're ready now. We're going to go all in. And we just completely shut off the old system.
Right.
And it wasn't difficult. We were all trained. Everyone kind of knew. But when you start to implement it right away, when you actually are relying on it every single day for the process to be successful, it it was more or less a transition of the data, not so much that the system was difficult, but all of a sudden you're recreating jobs that were, so we recreated existing jobs that were still open and entering new jobs in the new system. So the jobs in the new jobs in the system, that worked very smoothly. Getting those old jobs kind of integrated in certainly took
Mhm.
a little bit of effort and time, but very quickly we kind of got that all squared away. And then what matured from that? You mentioned about kind of like the stress level. We used to have delivery trucks going. We had 2 trucks going out every day, always putting out fires. We were chronically late to customers. Quality was poor at times. I like everything that a machine shop fears. Oh my God, we're going to be late on this delivery. Oh my God, we just got some parts rejected. It happened enough to us that we needed to change. Not only did we need an ERP change, that I needed to step in because I'm an outside sales guy. I'm developing new customers. I'm kind of on the front side. I kind of left the operation to a kind of like a 3-person team, myself and 2 other people, and one person overpowered the other person. Not, which I didn't realize because it wasn't expressed. In fact, our shop was kind of running in fear of the one person in leadership, but yet it was hidden to me. To be completely transparent, this was a very difficult time for us. Here I am developing new customers, promoting new sales. We move in a new building in 2015. We buy the MAM in 2022. We double our size of our business. A lot of growing pains over several years of an expansion of a business. And on top of that, then all of a sudden you find out that you have leadership in conflict with each other. And then what happens is one person, we're kind of like running a 3-spoke. So if I have 2 people that agree, okay, fine, they move forward. If one agrees and one doesn't agree, they bring me in, we discuss it. And then you reason together as a team and you would then come up with a solution. But when one person's being overpowered and then they're scared for their job, or they also, I think, the one person had 2 of their kids working in the company also. So now he's looking out for his 2 kids that are working in the company. And I found this all later. It was easier for him to be quiet and just do what he was kind of told rather than to foster leadership or be counter to what the leadership was that somewhat was hitting to me. That all came about very much ahead, very quickly, right at the point. And I think that was part of the reason that maybe adoption of ProShop wasn't necessarily going as easy as we thought it would be until I drew a line in the sand and we go all in on ProShop and said, no, we must do this. We're going to do this now. Stop using the old system. And that's when we lost one of our leadership members. And of course, we found out it wasn't because of the adoption of ProShop. It was because basically they were being a poor leader. And they were leading more by fear and intimidation than by actually everything that I just spoke about. Everything that who I am, it was completely opposite. My company here is running completely opposite than my own philosophies because I have different management, different leadership people. So I stepped back in, I reestablished really what K tooling really is. And right away, through my leadership, how I interact with a team, not because I'm making decisions on what's happening on the day to day, as far as, hey, you do this and you do that, or I'm controlling the schedule or any of those type things. Just the fact that I step in and say, okay, this is how we're going to now move forward. ProShop is part of this. Let's kind of go down this path, this EOS traction type path, right? And let's see how it goes. Right away, the stress level decreased. Things started to calm. But part of that calmness came from the scheduling component of ProShop, to where it was easy. If there were data errors, they're easy to clean up. All of a sudden now, through some training, my guy internally now he's kind of the schedule guru. He lined up all the scheduling very easy for all the machine tools. Plus, how you set up the lead time for vendors and for material within ProShop. All of a sudden, within a few months, we stopped having 2 trucks going in different directions. Now all of a sudden we're not behind. Now we're measuring our on-time performance. We're measuring our quality. Those little tiny hiccups. Our quality was never astronomically bad, but you would have things like, oh, there's plating in the hole. or,
Sure.
something like, hey, that's a quick fix cleanup, small percentage of the parts, customers, if there's one piece out of thousands of pieces that they find, they just send you back the whole allotment. At least our customers do.
Yeah.
And we have to
Yeah.
fix that and sort that. So through that process, all of a sudden now things start to calm down, things start to run smoothly. Pro Shop is that center hub. Yes, everyone's adopting Pro Shop. Yes, we start using it. Then all of a sudden the schedule starts to flow and be under control. And that allows us then to explore other things like the pre-process work that's getting done, managing our vendors, having the management review meetings, using things, the email for communication and the preventive action request. That's something that we use. So if a guy has, instead of somebody verbalizing something to their supervisor in real time, I promote the guys that say, hey, look, if you're seeing something, we don't use preventive action requests just for a safety thing. If they see something's at risk, we use it for any sort of, we use it as a voice box for any person as they're working during the course of the day. If they just, well, I could use a can of WD-40 here, just to spray, just to spray this squeaky wheel over here. Okay, fine. Put it in a preventive action request. It comes up through, hey, get this guy a can of WD-40. Of course, that's the example that I'm providing. But
Sure.
over time, all of a sudden, between communication amongst all the team members, between the workflow, start to mature because you're running this system that actually works. And I think that's what I can summarize.
Mm.
Then, once we get that, then we're ready to even address AS 9100. So we start to establish, I felt as if we were establishing the data. We are establishing the on-time performance. We're establishing the quality level performance that we set out for our own goals to measure. And as we're building that foundation of data, we can see that the system is working. Then we kind of make it as, okay, now we're even ready to address AS 9100 or ISO 9000. And that, of course, we purchased the Fly and Start package. So we kind of had that foundation. And through your team and through the process of kind of coaching us through getting us to the point of being able to perform the manager review meetings and the org chart and all these components that make up AS 9100, we can see the path that we're successful up until the point that I think in the fall of 2024. So we set out a goal through the spring of 2023, throughout 2023, kind of establishing the data record. And then when 2024 hit, we were like, okay, we're ready for AS 9100. Well, the biggest hurdle for us to achieve AS 9100 was me, because I'm the one that is spearheading this project. I'm the one that's dealing with somewhat of, when you run a business, there are business challenges. We certainly were having difficulties in securing work, repeat work, enough work at periods of time. Economic conditions started to change for us. Our commercial customer activity everyone kind of became silent all at the same time. Who knows the reasoning why? We kind of, after speaking to some colleagues, we had other colleagues that were kind of dealing with the same thing. We purchased this great machine, the MAM. We purchased that to have during economic strong times, for productivity, but also economic weak times when we have kind of pricing pressures, we can be most competitive on that machine. So we felt that was a good buy, but we knew that we needed, for our success, as I was pursuing outside sales, 50% of the customers that I'm pursuing are like, hey, you got to be ISO, you got to be AS, you got to have these standards, you got to be certified, or else we can't even start the conversation. And I would provide that feedback to the team. So the team was 100% buy-in for us to achieve AS ISO 9000. Pro Shop gave us the foundation to where we had a path. And although I was somewhat surprised, I couldn't get my head wrapped around of the expediency of how quick you can, with Pro Shop, how quick you can get yourself in a position to then have the register come and do the audit. As I said earlier, I was somewhat of the biggest hurdle with all the challenges of being a business owner, and sometimes I can't get out of my own way. So the learning curve, I probably could have got it done between January and June, just on my timeline. But to me, it took us an extra 6 months. So it took us to the end of 2024 to where we were truly ready. And then in January of 2025, we got our certification. The auditor came. They came in December to do in fact, in December, we did the first stage audit where they check your system. This was an auditor that did not know anything about ProShop. They were an auditor out of state. They were not on site. They were remote. We did the audit. I know you guys talk about this as far as, oh yeah, a 1-2 day audit and maybe or 3-day audit, maybe at the most. Other companies, you go through this process, might be a week. It's not that I didn't believe it. I just didn't know how is that possible? Why is it other system might take auditors are there for 3 or 4 days, but with ProShop, they're only there for a day or two. I didn't witness it. I didn't see it. I didn't know how that worked out. Then all of a sudden I'm living it. And the auditor and we spent 8 hours over the course of the day remotely. Show me this, show me that in your system. I'm sharing the screen. And they look at this and they, wow, okay, great. They use examples where people used to print off stuff and hold it up to the camera, hold up to the, on the computer camera, and they would hold up their documents and say, see, here's our documents. We were able to show show our complete system being 100% electronic. They could see it on the screen. They were really dumbfounded, not being exposed to ProShop. And the remote audit, which was a kind of a stage 1 audit, took 1 day, 8 hours. We passed those results. Then they said, okay, you passed that, so we're ready for the on-site audit. And we scheduled that for a month later in January. 2 auditors came, husband and wife team.
Oh,
They
wow.
came, and we were done in 1 day. So when I evaluate it, it probably would have been a day and a half worth of one auditor's time, but because they were 2, they traveled, I think, either the Friday before, spent the weekend in the area. Monday, they were with us. It was a 1-day event. I was shocked. They went through our whole system. They walked our floor. They saw everything that we had in being compliant for this QMS system. They reconfirmed how we were doing things in ProShop. So a lot of things carried over from the remote session. They kind of went through again on the in-person section. I wasn't involved on the on-site. I was there. I observed. I played a supporting role, but it really was my team that they did all that work. I have to commend the team, my QC department, Dan and Steve right there. Dan has taken over kind of the ProShop responsibility system in-house now. Steve's the head of my QC department. Those guys, I kind of put it in their lap and say, okay, you guys, make sure you guys prepare for this. Let me know if I can support you. But those 2 guys and then of course the rest of the team on the manufacturing floor, but it really was those guys that then took it in preparation for this on-site audit. And at the end of the day, we kind of sit down. In the morning, they kind of do an interview. It's not an interview process. It's kind of like a just expectations, kind of get to know you now that they're here on site. And at the end of the day, they recap. After they do all the work, they don't really hint. You can tell by the course of the day that everything's going well, but you really don't know. You don't know
Right.
what their findings are going to be. They're making notes. Yeah. She's logging in remotely to the portal for Oasis, or where she's making all these documentation notes. And you want to know, but you have to be respectful of the process. So you kind of sit back and you wait. And I keep quizzing the team. How's everything going? They running any hurdles? Everything's going fine. And at the end of the day, they kind of then recap and they say that we pass. It you can see I get choked up on it right now. Because it was such a necessity for us as a company that we needed to achieve ISO and AS 9100. Just from an outside sales perspective, that I kept just getting so many hurdles. and we need work in the shop. It seemed overwhelming at times. But once we pass, we had customers waiting on the sidelines that I kept communicating through those months of time. Perry, when are you going to be certified? We're ready to place orders, but you gotta have your certification. Monday they finish the audit. They tell us that we pass. I think Wednesday I had the cert. As soon as I had this actual physical cert, it was up. I created the link on the also the webmaster, the IT guy. So I modified the website. I have the cert up there. We're ready now to do business. We had one customer who's a tier 1 supplier, a tier 1, tier 2 supplier at the same time, depends on what division of their own company they're working on. They immediately sign on board and start sending us items to quote. They like everything that we're offering. They've already been to our facility. They come again to our facility. We go to their facility. They're very much hand-holding us through this process of becoming a supplier and vendor for them. That relationship is maturing and stuff quite well. We have another tier 1 for the DoD supplier that right away, as soon as we had our cert, I reached out to them. They were ready to present projects to us. We had to do sampling. It's been already been around 5 months of a process between sampling, going through the process. Of course, we weren't even eligible if we weren't AS certified. And that's why I kind of sent the email to you last week, today being Monday, that on Friday afternoon, we landed one of our biggest purchase orders from an individual client for a product that fits perfectly. It was a Goldilocks product for our MAM 5-axis. It's not a 5-axis part, but again, that 3+2, just that positional. We're going to have all 256 workstations running on this part. It's something that that's our niche. That's the direction and stuff that we're going, providing those, productive, low-cost solutions for very standard type products. And we landed the order. And as we've been measuring on your sales dashboard, right? We're measuring our incoming sales, our outgoing sales, invoices.
Yep.
It's a new record. It's a new record since we've been running ProShop. So our incoming sales for the month of May just hit a brand new record. It broke the previous May record by $1,000. So, I mean, it was not astronomical, but the path of all our commercial clients just going quiet over this year and then becoming AS. And it seems as if the clients that are busy happen to be AS clients. Don't get me wrong. We're seeing work. Things are starting to loosen up now from our commercial clients. It's been several months that commercial clients have been quiet. Now we're starting to see them spring back. Who knows if it was the election? Who knows if it was timing? Those are different discussions and stuff to have. What I know is that we lived a slowdown. At the same time, gave us an opportunity to actually work on becoming AS ISO certified. And as soon as we do, new opportunities are presented to us, and they happen to fall in that category. And we just secured one of our biggest orders from a brand new client. And the path now for us, at least, seems to be a foundational path, that we have this foundation now for us to where now we just can continue to expand and grow with clientele, both whether it be commercial, whether it be military, doesn't really matter for us. But that seems to be the direction. Our on-time delivery data is rock solid. Our quality is rock solid. So things are moving in the right direction. And I contribute that all to ProShop. And I just can't believe it. I just can't believe it that a piece of software could play a role. No matter, look, I've been on my own for over 30 years machining, having my own shop, ups and downs, all that stuff. It's just amazing that what is happening in the industry right now that we're living through, that between a piece of software and CAD CAM software becoming easier to program 5-axis type parts and everything that's going evolving, we certainly contribute. We certainly contribute the success that we're seeing right now to, of all things, a piece of software and you as an individual, because I have reached out to you um, for help to kind of say, look, I need some support, I need some help, and man, I can't believe that this conversation has led to this point. But man, I can't thank you and ProShop enough and the team for the success that we're seeing now. What else can I say?
Well, you're toking me up, Harry. This is why we do what we do. I feel like people like you are are the heroes of this economy. Like nothing else in the world would ever exist without brave people like you going through the ups and downs of running the hardest business in the world. And I appreciate the credit or the whatever, that it's software, and software is an important tool, but it's how you use it that really matters. And you and your team have done an incredible job. Immensely proud.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, you know, it's hard to say that could a piece of software play that much of a difference? For us, it did. It was just the right fit, the right tool. I'm sure there's great ERP systems out there. I know guys, I'm sure, are engineering the next thing. But man, I can tell you, this had the answer for us at a time when when we needed that answer. So
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I can remember those times you reached out, and I could tell that your business was in a tough spot. And I commend you for persevering through it, and rallying the team and doing what you had to do to pull it through, and really turn the corner on the future of your business now.
and you have an audience of business owners and stuff out there. I'm sure what I have faced, um, other people have similar challenges.
Absolutely.
I can tell you that I'm not one to give up, but there certainly were times when I felt as if, can I climb out of this? Can I, as an individual, lead my team? Because they're all looking at me. Perry,
Yeah.
we don't have enough work. Hey, Perry, we need this. Hey, we need that. And I question my own perseverance at times. And the only thing that I can say, was always light at the end of the tunnel. It was, hey, we're gonna be AS. Just hold on. I have customers waiting. Once we achieve our AS certification, there'll be new opportunity for us. Hey, once we achieve this, we're looking at the sales data. We can see our numbers. We can see numbers. Yeah, they go down, but they also come back. Hey, hold on. Our projected sales I couldn't see that stuff before. I couldn't see in the new ERP system. We use QuickBooks. You know, it's not necessarily a forecasting type tool. It just kind of shows you where you are and where you've been. It's not telling you where you're going. Those are all kind of gut feelings and guesses previously. And every shop has been on the verge of having no business, and then maybe something hits. We've been there, but then all of a sudden things don't hit. And then you're like, wow, holy cow, what is the path? And ProShop certainly provided us guidance at different aspects within the software platform to kind of say, well, hold on. We see that our projected sales are this. This is what's going on. Let's keep working through this. We've been on WorkShare, which WorkShare is a thing where guys are kind of working part time and able to collect some unemployment benefits at the same time. Man, I can tell you, we 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 have been all up and down on a roller coaster quite aggressively. It's a very volatile roller coaster. When you say this is one of the hardest things, I know guys they talk about the restaurant business being hard. They talk about other things being hard. This stuff can be hard. It's a lot of fun.
Mm.
I love the cutting, the metal, the integration of metal and, kind of old school blacksmith workmanship type stuff and the great side of the computer technology. I think as a machinist, if you're a machinist, you kind of, especially a CNC machinist, you can you feel that, hey, I love the kind of like the IT computer component, and I love the actual cutting of the chip components. We get so excited just seeing chips come off the machine, even now, especially on that fifth axis machine, seeing all that automation and stuff run. But man, what a ride. Now, the ride's not over for us. This is just a moment in time. But I can tell you that we have the foundation with ProShop that now it's just a matter of us continuing to do the work to maintain our on time delivery, to maintain a quality performance, all these things that we're measuring. I posted stuff on my website. I have a customer section on the website. I'm constantly posting that stuff, what our stats are, if customers or new people are kind of curious exactly where we perform. I put it right out there, good or bad, it's there. Non-conformance, corrective actions, we live that stuff every single day. But man, we're achieving all this again because of ProShop. I can't say it enough. I don't want to come across as I have to reserve myself many times when I start talking about ProShop because I don't want to, when I'm talking to other people who maybe implemented an ERP system, I don't want to come across that I'm trying to sell them or convince them that something that I'm using is better or something they should be looking at. I just like I kind of shout it from the mountaintops. Okay, hey man, this is my story. This is what works for us. Do your investigation. Maybe it's something that will work for you.
Oh, this is this exact conversation is why I wanted to start this particular podcast, to share those transformational stories that are heartwarming and meaningful and impactful to entrepreneurs, to businesses, to communities, to employees, to the entire community that you have built up around K tooling.
One of the things that led also to ProShop in the very early stages was a colleague of yours, Jim Carr.
Mm-hmm.
You guys were running a podcast. Is it Making Chips or something?
Making chips. Yep.
So I heard a podcast, and Jim went through this process.
Yes, he did.
And in the podcast, they talk about, hey, contact me if you have any questions or what. I reached out to Jim, and he called me. And him and I spent, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. He also used a similar ERP system that we were using in his past. We were running very similar parallels. Now, I listened to his podcast, great success and stuff to him. But man, what a great guy just to kind of have a dialogue with. And I do the same thing now. I'm constantly talking to individuals. Hey, you haven't achieved AS. You need to achieve AS. Hey, I at least know enough about AS now that I can provide some guidance. Forget about the ProShop platform itself. That's the tool that I used. But I know enough now that if someone is struggling, if they need some help, they need some guidance, I put myself out there too. I'm there, whether it be a machine on the machining side, and that may lead into our discussion as far as the little work holding tool and stuff that we developed. I don't think it's not necessarily anything special, but it's a tool that we utilize quite well because I bump into colleagues that are also willing to share. When I started machining, and guys may experience this, when I walked into the machine shop as a 18-year-old, nobody wanted to help you. Everyone, the philosophy I think in a lot of companies were like, well, everyone's afraid of losing their job. So the older guys were like, yeah, kid, hey, if you can't do it, that's on you. Such a poor philosophy for a company, for companies to have. And a lot of those companies, I don't know if there was a reason why they weren't successful, but if that was how their leadership viewed their employees, I learned a lot. I guess the best thing I can say is I learned a lot from those guys of how not to run an organization. The last thing I want is my employees to be fearful of bringing in new staff or promote these guys. Hey, take this guy underneath your wing and train him. The last thing I want my guys to be concerned about is that they're going to lose their job because they're training somebody else, that they're training someone to replace them. I lived that.
Yeah. Right.
Never understood that. But yeah, I put myself out there at my own expense. I don't even, I always tell people, look, and I'm not going to charge you. Just let's have a dialogue. Let me provide some information. Let me help you on your path, because we all know that in this industry, they've been talking about shortage when I got in it. And I didn't fall into machining. I set out to be a machinist. And through my vocational high school days of taking machining and drafting, and then of course I wasn't aware of even college offering courses at the time. I just jumped into the workforce and learned, and then asked one of my bosses to say, "Could I rent your machine on the weekend and come in?" And that's how K tooling started. I would go in and just kind of, tear out their job, set up my job, work Saturday, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday. I almost put in, I don't know, I can't say I put in 40 hours in a few days, but man, I worked around the clock, and then would set up their job back in their machine, prove it all out as a ghost, as if I never was even there. It's a shout out to some of my former employers who kind of helped me on my path. There's some good guys out there.
Well, you're such a good example of the shift in the industry that I think we've seen over the last few decades of like, you can't step foot in my shop. I don't want to help anyone out. I'm afraid of, I have the scarcity mindset around my job to, yeah, you're welcome in. I'll tell you everything I know. I want to support the industry. I want to give back. I've had many guests that have seen that shift in this last generation as well. So thank you for being a part of that. It's so critical to the success of the entire industry.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all focused on, the success of the industry. Yeah, we play a role, and I'm after, I want to be successful, but like I said, both of the employees and people that I interact with, I don't feel good if somebody has a problem, and if they reach out to me, you want to try to help them.
Hmm. Oh, Barry, so good. Oh my gosh, man.
What an emotional ride this has been, right?
This is good stuff. This is good. This is real. This is real stuff. This is real shit. This what you've been through, where you are today, like that's meaningful and real. And I know people will relate and feel it themselves, empathize and probably feel seen themselves, even though they're just sitting on the end of the podcast listening.
Right.
Yeah, someone like you has been through that, and I'm sure you'd welcome a call from them
Oh
if
yeah.
they need a
Yeah.
a little pep talk through a hard time.
One of the things, when we spoke about, you mentioned earlier about this work holder and stuff we came up with.
Yeah.
When we had to shut, I took it off the website because in order for us to be AS, we opted for the non being a job shop. We're relying on the customer to provide the design of their product. We're not doing any design work.
Hmm.
We're not engineering anything. We can support a customer, but we have to be careful what we suggest. So we kind of leave it in the customer's hands.
Yep.
One of the things that we needed to do, we actually turned off from the website our Octane product there, because we weren't pursuing that in order for our AS 9100 certification. So in a last minute type discussion with the auditor, they said, "Hey, you can't, if you're designing something or you got some sort of product, we got to redo this whole thing." And I said, "Well, what's the alternative? Just shut it down, remove it from your website." So we were like, "Yeah, no problem." I immediately removed it for our certification. But basically, that MAM is a 5-axis machine tool, and there's always a challenge of populating that machining envelope. No matter what size your envelope is, you want to try to populate it with machine parts. We came up with, at the time, really where we struggled is that we couldn't find it commercially available. Now, as I researched over time, there are a couple outlying companies that make some things that are similar. It's basically it's an 8-sided pyramid, but it's a little bit bigger than it fits our envelope quite well and our part sizes well. We wanted to try to find some things that were commercially available. So pick any of your vice manufacturers or that are building self-center vices. They're all building. You got to find the right size that kind of fits your type of part. For us, we found some stuff that was bigger than what was available out there, but smaller than some of the, the bigger stuff. So it kind of fit again, it was a Goldilocks type size product. It was newly developed, I think, at IMTS in 2022 when we went. So we already had the machine. We had guys pulling stuff out of their cabinet. It wasn't product that was displayed. It was stuff that they were working on. Hey, we're going to be introducing this. We're developing this. And it was like, well, I need a solution right now. And so what we did, we took commercially available vices that were out there, 0 point clamp vices, and we just built our own 8-sided pyramid, kind of like what was out there, just a little bit more on steroids. Because when we would inquire with suppliers, 8-week lead times, 12-week lead times, we needed product right away. So it's nothing more than for us, we're utilizing a 52 millimeter, 96 millimeter 0 point clamping system, which fits very well on our MAM machine tool platform. And we took big diameter pieces of aluminum, machined them all down in the machine, adopted the 96 52 millimeter pattern so we could quick change these things. And it has led to us being versatile enough, whether it be 8-sided, 3-sided, 4-sided, 2-sided, we continue to adapt these very much now available products. So very quickly, I mean, anybody with a lathe and a milling center, certainly a 5-axis, of course, we hard coded, anodized ours. We did have an objective to offer them, not that it was unique, just that what we found out is that we needed product immediately. We needed solutions immediately for work holding. And there's a lot of stuff out there. But for us, we came up with that. We thought it might be something that we would then promote and sell. But then in violation of our AS 9100 pursuit, which is a higher priority for us, we just shut it down. That's what we use internally. And anyone can adapt. Everyone kind of has their own spin on that. There's more product now in the last couple of years. You're talking about, almost 3 years now since us doing that. There's certainly now the companies that specialize in work holding certainly probably have solutions for everybody. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun, that project, and us coming up with something. We thought it might go in a direction for us, but for us, that's now kind of shut down. But when I say shut down, it's just that's something that we keep internally for us.
Right.
This project that I just landed on Friday, we will have 256 of these parts running.
That's amazing.
That 256 parts will take around 16 hours to run. So
Nice.
you could see that it's a very short cycle time part. So it's a
Sure.
relatively low dollar type part. So we're able to compete on what very simple geometry type parts. We're able to get up and running 24 hours a day with that type of platform because we're fitting 8. 8 seems to be the size. Once you get beyond that, work holding becomes too specialized. We wanted something that was just commercially available. You could always build your own fixture and populate. We've seen fixturing for the horizontal using Mighty Bites. They may populate 500 pieces, right, on a 8-sided type tombstone structure. Mighty Bite has examples of that on their website. Very unique, specialized. We wanted something versatile that we can go from one job immediately to the other job without having to really do any specialized tooling. So that continues to be a platform that works well for us. And I'm sure everyone with whether
Very
it be
cool.
dovetail, clamping or any of that stuff, they can kind of see those benefits. We just took it to a certain point that really worked well for us.
Very cool. Well, it's obviously that's a key part of you winning this big contract as well and being able to tool it up to that density.
It was a Goldilocks part. We were able to be very competitive on it. It's a win-win
Mhm.
for the customer. It's a win for us. When they approved our samples, the email actually read, "These are the best parts we've ever seen." I
I
couldn't,
love it.
you know,
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
I couldn't believe knowing the customer, I couldn't believe that. If they didn't write it down and send it to me in an email, I myself would not have believed it.
That's awesome.
So there was, and that's a combination of the surface finish and the plating and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, fantastic. Just a win-win for everybody.
Well, I will maybe push back a little bit on your auditors, because our shop was AS9100 and we made our own commercial products that were not AS certified and we sold them. Um, you just need to put it in your QMS that not all work has to follow the same requirements. Like, I don't know if you're familiar, but in the contact module, if you put that they're aerospace,
Yeah.
it puts a little AS.
Oh yeah, we do that with the AS clients. Yep.
Yep, yep. And then we just wrote right into our QMS that if it doesn't say AS next to that customer, we don't need to follow the standard. And so that opens the door to do commercial work.
That's interesting.
Now we generally would do it anyway. We always had material certs. We always did first articles.
Yeah.
We wanted to have a robust process. But as far as passing the audit goes,
Yeah.
that's a key. So
No, we might revisit that.
hopefully you'll stay so busy with great paying commercial work,
Right.
or aerospace work that you don't need to make your own product again.
Yeah.
But if people reach out and you're like, you know what, maybe we should pick this back up again, I think there's a door for you to do that.
There certainly was some interest. To me, it was more or less, somebody could do it themselves. I'm sure guys are doing it themselves every single day. But it
Yeah.
was a real quick solution for something that seemed to be that it wasn't the product wasn't available commercially available. That it was like, wow, if we're having this problem, other people must also be having this problem. Why not come up with something that
Mhm.
that solves that problem?
Yeah. Well, Perry, I can honestly say this has been one of my favorite conversations I've had probably all year. I really am
Oh, I
pleased
appreciate
for
it.
your success. It's humbling, it's heartwarming. We'll definitely share this podcast with our entire team, and yeah, just appreciate you coming on and telling your story. If people want to reach out and work with such an amazing company as Take K Tooling, how would you recommend they reach out to you?
Well, the best way, of course, is visit our website. It's all one word: KTOOLING, ktooling.com. My email and address and stuff is there. Telephone, all our contact information there. That's certainly the best way to at least get started. We do have a link and stuff on there to reach out. I'm on social media both as Perry Kuehn on LinkedIn and K Tooling. So there's certainly those are avenues and stuff to reach out, make a connection. I'm always interested in making connections, and having a dialogue, talking shop. In fact, I have a colleague right now that I'm helping through the process that wants to be part of your organization, looking to figure out if he knows enough about pro shop and becoming an implement tater, as far as
Mm-hmm.
that goes, somebody, that can offer those services. So, we'll see what direction I asked him to reach back out to me if he was having some difficulty. So who knows where that conversation would go, but
Cool.
yeah, we're always
Cool.
interested to kind of help each other out.
Well, thanks for giving back to the industry the way you do. And thank you for being a machinist. I got the shirt always. Thank you for being a machinist and everything you're doing. And as a machining, leader and owner of a business,
Well,
putting
thanks.
yourself out there to create those jobs, support that economy. And thank you for your time today. This has been a really awesome conversation.
I enjoyed it, Paul. Thank you. Got me an opportunity to actually thank you in front of quite a wide audience. I'm sure of how real this is and was for us.